Have you ever felt a chilling touch, a sense of being watched, even when you knew you were completely alone? What if the specter of the past wasn't just a memory, but a desperate plea, a terrifying truth buried deep, waiting for you to uncover it?
Help me, please, I beg you, spare me. You can take anything, the house, I don't care. Just let me live to raise my child. I'm begging you. You dare defy me? You think you can stand against me? I'll send you to join your crazy family's ancestors. It was a woman's desperate scream, mingled with the deafening crash of breaking glass and the sickening thud of blows. In the dead of the night, these sounds echoed from a 4-story house in a new urban development, shattering the peaceful silence.
The usually quiet row of townhouses suddenly buzzed with activity. Lights flickered on one by one. Some people peeked through their curtains, while others hurried out into the street, gathering to whisper and speculate. This was an upscale residential area, and most residents had only moved in within the last year or so. They were mostly young couples or groups of friends sharing rented homes, so they were quite friendly with each other. The sudden outburst from the house of Mark and Holly, a couple known for their pleasant demeanor, shocked everyone.
As people debated whether to intervene in a domestic dispute, a collective gasp swept through the crowd. On the second floor of Mark and Holly's house, 2 struggling figures wrestled violently behind the glass curtains. One hand, unmistakably a man's, gripped the woman's hair, yanking her head back, while his other hand held a sharp object, threateningly raised to her face. The situation escalated rapidly. Mike and Chris, brothers who lived nearby, rushed forward, repeatedly ringing the doorbell. The others scattered to call security and the building management for help.
The doorbell chimed frantically, but the automatic garage door remained stubbornly shut. Unable to break in, they could clearly hear Holly's desperate screams and the sickening sounds of slaps and kicks landing on her body. A chill ran down their spines. They feared the worst. Chris, a medical technician, raced home to grab a folding ladder. Mike quickly followed. The second-floor window was a sliding type and unlocked from the inside. Chris and Mike burst through, but they were a second too late. Both Mark and Holly lay motionless on the floor, their bodies submerged in a pool of blood. The sharp knife remained deeply embedded in Mark's chest.
Chris, drawing on his first aid experience, quickly examined Mark. He shook his head, looking at Mike, who stood trembling beside him. "Mark, he's gone." Fortunately, Holly still had a pulse. It looks like the knife only grazed the soft tissue in her shoulder. "Call for an ambulance." Chris swiftly used a towel from the bed to administer first aid to Holly. Mike, with his fear of blood, hurried down to the first floor, pressed the button to open the main door, then ran outside, dialed 911, and informed the other neighbors. About 3 minutes later, the urban development's security guards arrived, cordoning off the scene. The ambulance followed closely, taking the injured woman to the hospital. The wail of ambulance sirens and the commotion in the middle of the night drew all the residents of the adjacent townhouses. They gathered in front of Mark and Holly's house to observe and discuss the situation. Chris, Mike, and the other witnesses were taken in by the police for questioning. The women in the neighborhood were all in disbelief. Mark was known for doting on his wife, yet he had suddenly turned violent and ultimately died tragically by his own knife. The next morning, news of the talented dental surgeon, district councilor, assaulting his wife and being stabbed to death became a trending topic online. The case garnered immense attention because Mark was the owner of a reputable aesthetic dental clinic, frequently appearing on television for consultations, and had recently been elected to the district council, making him quite well known. Reporters swarmed Mark's neighborhood, extracting snippets of information from neighbors, which was enough for them to sensationalize headlines and publish them online without verification. Holly, Mark's wife, had regained consciousness in the hospital. Holly, a kindergarten teacher, was usually very friendly with her neighbors and actively involved in charity work. Hearing that she had been abused by her husband, the local Women's Association visited her in the hospital. Not long after the Women's Association left, online news outlets were flooded with articles expressing sympathy for the young pregnant woman in her 5th month, describing how her intellectual husband, under the guise of respectability, had abused her, cheated, and forced her into divorce. Naturally, these articles successfully swayed public opinion, compelling the police to expedite their investigation to issue an early conclusion and press release. Mike and Chris, being crucial witnesses, remained at the police station to provide statements until well into the afternoon before returning home.
Mike sat in silence, exhausted, his eyes heavy. As an accomplished engineer at a well-known tech corporation, he was accustomed to high-pressure work environments. Yet after just one night of sleep deprivation, his mind felt incredibly sluggish. Chris, still focused on driving, occasionally turned to chat idly. Mike remained drowsy, unable to open his eyes. It wasn't until the car approached the entrance of their housing development that Chris finally called out, "Mike, wake up! We're home!" Mike slowly forced his heavy eyelids open, his head resting against the window, grimacing as the glaring sunlight pierced his eyes, bringing on a fresh wave of pain. He fumbled for his sunglasses in the compartment and put them on, trying to adjust to the brightness. Just then, he saw a man in a white doctor's coat about to cross the street. But Chris showed no sign of slowing down. Mike, startled, yelled out, grabbing his brother's steering wheel to swerve away from the man. "Chris, watch out!" Chris was caught off guard and slammed on the brakes. The car skidded out of control, veering towards the sidewalk, narrowly missing a lamppost before finally coming to a stop. Once composed, both Chris and Mike anxiously looked outside to see if they had hit the man, but there were only 2 faint tire marks on the road and no one in sight. At this, Chris angrily yelled at his younger brother, "Are you crazy? What was that all about?" Mike stammered, "Chris, did you see that man? He was just crossing in front of us and now he's gone." "There was no one there. Are you dreaming? You suddenly lurched forward like that. You almost hit that lamppost. Now I have to go to the shop to fix the car." Chris snapped at his brother, then angrily climbed into the driver's seat and got out of the car, leaving Mike frantically searching around again. He was clearly just crossing in front of the car. Maybe I'm hallucinating? But he looked so familiar. Where have I seen him before? Mike mumbled to himself. Hearing Chris's impatient honk, Mike quickly got back in the car, not forgetting to look back one last time for the man who had vanished before his eyes. Back home, both brothers showered and collapsed onto their beds for a nap. About 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Assuming it was the delivery person, Mike groggily got up and shuffled downstairs to retrieve his order. His headache hadn't completely subsided. As the automatic door rolled up, bright sunlight streamed directly into his face, forcing him to squeeze his eyes shut. He struggled to stay upright as the intense light made his head feel like it was about to explode. The delivery person stood outside, looking at Mike intently, then asked, "Are you okay, sir? Do you need any help?" "Thank you, just a bit of a headache. Can I have my order?" Mike took the bag of food from the delivery person, checked the items, and reached for his wallet. But as he looked up, he suddenly jumped back, staggering, almost falling. The delivery person who had just been standing there was now a different person. And that person was the very man who, just hours earlier, had lain dead with a knife in his chest. Dr. Mark, their neighbor.
Mike's entire body trembled, a cold shiver running down his spine. Though the outdoor temperature was a scorching 104 degrees Fahrenheit, the jolt that had just coursed through him left him paralyzed. He could only stand rooted to the spot, staring at the delivery person who now wore Dr. Mark's face. "What happened to all the food? What am I going to eat now? What's wrong with you today?" Chris's sharp voice from behind startled Mike back to reality. He stammered, pointing at the delivery person, then whispered, "Chris, who is that? Another delivery person? Good heavens! It's like you've seen a ghost. Now what am I going to eat? I still have to go to work." Chris glared at the scattered food on the floor and walked straight back inside. Mike watched the delivery person, who remained standing there until the car disappeared from sight. "What's wrong with me? Am I seeing things?" Mike mumbled to himself. Then Mike grabbed a broom to clean up the mess he had made, and then, trembling, went to the kitchen to find instant noodles. Chris had already set up a pot of boiling water and 2 bowls of noodles. As Mike walked in, Chris continued to grumble. "Still not up to cook dinner? It's 6 p.m. What's wrong with you? You're 28 years old, but you act like a withered leaf. Aren't you tired of this? You need to exercise or you'll really lose your mind. Seriously." Mike knew his brother was tired and annoyed, so he didn't argue. Despite his exhaustion, he forced himself to the table to eat the steaming noodles. As Chris added 2 eggs, Mike knew his brother had a hot temper, but cared deeply for him. So even though he lived with Chris and was constantly scolded, he never dared to talk back. After eating, Chris quickly changed into his scrubs and left for work at the hospital. He was probably used to the stressful demands of his job, often working overnight shifts, so even with the lack of sleep, he still had the energy to dive into work. Mike, being an IT professional, was supposed to go to work today, but because he had to give a statement at the police station, he took the day off. He had been working tirelessly on a project recently, and after all that, just as he thought he'd finally catch up on sleep, this incident happened. Now his entire body ached, and all he wanted was to lie down and sleep until morning. Mike quickly drifted into a deep sleep, and to his dismay, a nightmare began. He dreamt he was back in the neighbor's house in the early hours of that morning. Blood was everywhere on the floor. Mark's body, with the knife still embedded in his chest, slowly sat up, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at Mike. Mike had a deep-seated fear of blood due to a childhood accident, so this scene intensified his terror. He desperately wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Mark's corpse sat up, blood gushing from the wound in his chest, staining his white shirt crimson. Then Mark's hand reached out, grabbing Mike's wrist, shaking it as if pleading for something. Mike looked down at his own blood-soaked hand, a shiver running through his entire body. He wanted to scream, but couldn't. Meanwhile, the doctor's corpse crawled out the door, leaving long trails of blood on the floor. Mike unconsciously followed, as if in a trance. In a blink, he found himself standing on the house's rooftop. Mark's corpse slowly stood up, climbed onto some potted plants, and stared intently into the empty space. Mike stood right behind him, observing Mark's every move, then mirroring them. When Mike stood among the potted plants, looking out in the direction Mark was staring, he could clearly see the neighboring house's rooftop from this angle. That house also had a similar rooftop design to Mark's, and perhaps the two families were close, as the rooftop cage had a locked door. In an emergency, one could easily climb from one house to the other without using the main entrance. Mark's bloodied corpse was no longer mournful, but filled with intense hatred. Mike could distinctly feel Mark trembling with rage, his eyes burning red like blood, fixed on the house next door. And then he pulled out the knife, aiming it at the opposite rooftop. Blood gushed from Mark's wound, soaking him and then spreading to Mike's body. Mike was now surrounded by blood, drowning in a crimson field, unable to utter a single cry for help. He struggled to escape the pool of blood, then stumbled, falling flat on the ground. At that moment, Mike jolted awake from his nightmare, scrambling to sit up, leaning against the bed frame. The sudden fall had sent a sharp pain through his body as he hit the floor. He tried to shake his head to clear his thoughts, still reeling from the vivid dream. Mike found it strange because, normally, due to their busy schedules, Mark and he rarely spoke to each other, only exchanging polite greetings when they met. Yet, Ever since Mark's death, Mike had been constantly seeing him, both in his dreams and when awake. But then Mike reassured himself. It must be due to the trauma of encountering a bloodied corpse, leading to hallucinations, nothing serious. He glanced at the wall clock. It showed 4 p.m. Mike went into the bathroom and immersed himself in a warm bath to relax his muscles, as he had endured too many terrifying events that day.
A few days later, Mike was swept into a new project, often working overtime, so he brought his work to the company dormitory. The commute from the high-tech zone to his home was also about 40 kilometers. The demanding work made Mike completely forget about Dr. Mark's case and the unsettling dream he had that day. After 4 consecutive days of overtime, Mike and his team finally got a day off. While waiting for feedback from a partner on their product demo, Chris, hearing Mike was off, personally came to pick up his brother to go to their parents' house for a meal, as it had been a long time since they visited.
On the way, Chris casually struck up a conversation with Mike to pass the time. Ever since that incident at Mark and Holly's house, our place has been swarming with reporters and police asking for information. At first, people concluded that Mark intended to kill his wife, but somehow Holly stabbed him instead. Now I hear Holly is being prosecuted for murder, claiming self-defense beyond reasonable limits, but she's not accepting it. She hired a lawyer, and it's none other than Mr. Arthur Turner, who lives right next door. Mike absorbed this, then his brain replayed the neighborhood incident. Surprised, he asked, "So are we being summoned to testify, Chris? And Mr. Turner, the lawyer, seems quite close to that family, right? They even have a connecting rooftop?" "That's just what I heard. It takes a few more procedures before it even goes to court." "How would you know they're so close, and even about their connecting rooftop?" Mike suddenly remembered he was mixing up his dream and reality, so he chuckled to brush it off. "Just a guess. Mr. Turner is about Mark's age, right? He must be a good lawyer given he bought a house here while his parents in the countryside worked so hard." "Yeah, very good. Holly relied on him. Apparently, Mr. Turner helped Mark out with a lawsuit from a patient before, so Mark was indebted to him. He even helped them with some money when they bought this house. I heard about it at the year-end party. So, Mike, are you feeling sleepy yet? You've been working non-stop."
Mike listened to his brother, his eyes heavy with sleep. Just as he was drifting off, he suddenly heard a man's voice faintly in his ear. "I didn't kill him. I was framed." Mike jolted awake, frantically asking his brother, "Did you hear that?" Chris, still focused on driving, turned to look at Mike's pale face and replied, "Hear what? The radio? What's wrong?" "No, a man's voice. It sounded familiar, but I can't place it." "There's no one else here. Are you dreaming? You suddenly lurched forward like that. You almost hit that lamppost. Now I have to repair the car." Mike knew Mike wouldn't believe him no matter what he said, so Mike reluctantly agreed to his brother's explanation. But a chilling feeling crept into his heart. From that moment until they returned to their parents' home, Mike didn't dare to sleep, his eyes wide open, staring at the passing scenery, chasing after those baffling thoughts. That night, after dinner, Mike and Chris drove back to their home in the city center because Chris had an early shift the next morning. The weather today was no longer hot, but stormy, making it cooler. Mike felt safer in the passenger seat, but didn't dare to sleep, fearing he might hear that strange voice again. As night deepened, the wind grew stronger, and the streets were pitch black and deserted. Mike stared at the raindrops hitting the window, desperately trying to keep his eyes open. As the car turned into their familiar neighborhood, Mike saw a man standing forlornly under a dim street lamp, gazing at the house where the incident had occurred. Mike blinked a few times to be sure, then exclaimed, "Hey, who's that, Chris, standing out there in this storm?" Chris also looked through the rainy blur in the direction Mike pointed, but saw nothing. He shrugged in surprise and said, "I don't see anyone. Maybe you should get your eyes checked at the hospital, Mike, and a general checkup too.
Lately, I've noticed you're always seeing things that aren't there, imagining sounds. No, look, he's still standing there, right in front of Mark and Holly's house.
The brothers' car rolled to a stop right in front of the neighbor's house. Chris turned to Mike and asked, "Who are you talking about? Or are you seeing ghosts?" "If it were a person, I'd see them too, wouldn't I?" But the man was clearly still standing in front of Mark and Holly's house. Hearing Chris's car stop, the man slowly turned to face Mike, his face deathly pale, his eyes sockets deep and hollow. Mike recognized him instantly. Horrified, he stammered, pointing at the man and crying out, It's Mark! Oh my God!" Mike's distress was so profound that Chris, though seeing no one where Mike pointed, felt a surge of concern for his brother. Knowing Mike wouldn't play such a trick, he worriedly patted Mike's shoulder and asked seriously, "Look closely, Mike! Or is it a thief? With things so tight, maybe it's someone scouting for a break-in."
Just as Chris finished speaking, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the thick curtain of rain at the end of the street. From only a few meters away, Mike was certain he hadn't imagined it, especially that pale, haunting face. He took a shaky breath, then turned to his brother, pleading, "Chris, maybe you should take me for a psychiatric evaluation. I think I just saw a ghost. That was Dr. Mark. The person standing there was Dr. Mark." "Mike, for heaven's sake, what are you talking about? Ghosts? Or are you just overworked and hallucinating? Let's go home now and you get some sleep. If you're still having hallucinations, I'll take you for a brain scan, see if anything's wrong."
Hearing his brother, Mike felt deeply uneasy. Either he had encountered a ghost, or, as Chris suggested, he was suffering from some brain condition causing hallucinations, especially since he had been repeatedly seeing images of his deceased neighbor recently. Chris, also worried, parked the car in the garage and led Mike upstairs. Though Mike was 28, Chris still had a habit of caring for him like a younger brother, particularly since a car accident 20 years ago had made Chris even more protective. Seeing Mike's exhausted and pale face, Chris quickly heated water and brewed a cup of honey tea for his brother to help him sleep. Once done, Chris returned to his own room, not forgetting to remind Mike to monitor his health. The rain had now softened to a gentle drizzle, making the air cool and pleasant. Thanks to the warm honey tea, Mike easily drifted into a peaceful sleep. As he slept soundly, he heard a faint clicking sound from outside his door, like someone tapping a metal balcony railing rhythmically. He lay still, listening for a moment, but the tapping didn't stop. Mike mustered his courage, got out of bed, and went to open the balcony door. And perhaps that was the worst decision he could have made at that moment, for he nearly fainted when he saw Dr. Mark himself, standing on Mike's balcony railing, the knife still embedded in his chest, his sunken eyes fixed on Mike.
Mike stammered in terror. What do you want from me? What did I ever do to you when you were alive?" Mark's ghost continued to stare at Mike. His face, illuminated by the street lamp, was haggard and pitiful, not the resolute and healthy countenance Mark had possessed in life. Mike repeated his question. "What do you want from me? Why are you following me like this?" "I didn't kill him. They framed me. I'm innocent. Help me." The distant, sorrowful voice then slowly stood up and drifted away from Mike's room. "Mike can see me. Please, help me find peace. Help him." As Mark finished speaking, a thunderous boom echoed through the night, followed by a flash of lightning signaling an approaching thunderstorm. And with that lightning bolt, Dr. Mark's ghost vanished. Mike's body finally relaxed, completely free. He sank to the cold tile floor, gasping for breath as his heart, which had been working overtime for several minutes, slowly returned to normal.
Once he regained his composure, Mike quickly closed the balcony door and returned to his desk, opening his computer to search for information about restless spirits and news articles about the deceased famous dentist.
He wanted to find any information related to Dr. Mark before and after his death. After a while, Mike managed to find Mark's Facebook page. On Facebook, Dr. Mark's page was filled with posts about dental hygiene, promoting the chain of dental clinics he owned. Scrolling back about 1 to 4 months, Mark had posted a photo with his wife in a black and white ultrasound scan, proudly announcing that their family was expecting a baby. It was truly a happy family, and it was hard to believe that just a few months later, such a happy family would be torn apart, with one dead and the other facing trial. Mike carefully saved all relevant news articles and several Facebook posts by Dr. Mark.
After finishing his work, Mike closed his eyes and whispered a prayer to himself. If you are truly here, please guide me so I can help you, but please don't appear in such a horrifying form. I promise I will help you by any means necessary. With that, Mike turned off his computer and went back to bed, just as the clock struck 5 a.m. And from that moment on, Mike no longer saw or heard any strange knockings. He was finally able to sleep soundly until 10 a.m. After brushing his teeth and eating the fried rice Chris had prepared, he made a cup of coffee to clear his head. Mike then sat down at his computer and resumed his detective work.
He spent hours researching Holly, Mark's wife, on social media. According to Mark's spirit, he had been framed, which meant Holly must have intentionally caused his death, rather than it being simple self-defense. Furthermore, everyone's testimony stated they saw Dr. Mark holding a knife, threatening his wife, but no one saw Mark's face clearly. Everyone was merely guessing based on the shadow cast on the window curtain. Mike himself had once mistaken that shadow for Mark, but he could have been wrong. Mike became even more convinced that there was something unclear about his neighbor's death. He didn't know what the investigators had found, but he decided to personally uncover the truth. Scrolling through Holly's Facebook, Mike saw that she often shared everyday pictures, portraying herself as a wife doted on by her husband. Yet, strangely, Holly rarely posted clear photos of her husband or pictures with him. Most were photos of expensive gifts and check-ins at luxurious resorts, accompanied by flirtatious romantic captions under her alluring selfies. Mike also noticed that under almost every post, Holly had a consistent commenter named Ronald M., who would like or leave smiling comments. Mike checked Ronald M.'s account and discovered that he was only friends with Holly. Mike immediately searched for the name Ronald M. and was surprised. Among the related results, he found a rather interesting piece of information. The first vice president and second president of the United States was a lawyer and also named Ronald M.
Suddenly, Mike remembered his dream from the other day where he followed Mark to the rooftop and they both looked towards the neighboring house. That was Mr. Arthur Turner, the lawyer's house, who was also very close to Mark and Holly's family. A terrifying scenario suddenly materialized in his mind. Mike had been at his computer for over 2 hours. Noticing that it was about to storm outside, Mike quickly left his desk and rushed to the attic to retrieve his brother's laundry from the drying rack. Once there, Mike hesitated for a moment, then leaned out onto the balcony. Although Dr. Mark's attic and the adjacent townhouses shared a similar exterior design, the interior designs could be completely altered by the owners. So, while Mike's house shared a common wall with Mark's, allowing for a shared wall, Mark's house and Mr. Turner's lawyer's house only had a front wall, with the back using an iron cage. However, from Mike's precarious position, he could only get a quick glimpse, not clearly seeing if there was an iron door connecting Dr. Mark's attic to Mr. Turner's house. Disappointed, Mike finished gathering the laundry, then returned to his room, found the selfie stick he had bought for his ex-girlfriend, which was still in a drawer, and hurried back to the attic to continue his investigation of the neighbor's house. First, Mike attached his phone to the selfie stick, recording a video of the entire interior of Dr. Mark's attic.
He adjusted the angle to capture every corner, then quickly returned to his room to review the footage. And to his surprise, there was no surprise. The attic walls of Dr. Mark's house and Mr. Turner's lawyer's house were exactly as he had seen in his dream. Outside, it had started to rain. Mike stood from his window, looking out with a heavy heart. "What should I do next to help you, Mark?" Mike was startled by the rhythmic click-clack of a keyboard in his room, and the lights flickered erratically. He looked bewildered at the computer on his desk. A line of text had appeared on the screen he didn't know when. Apartment 1008, Maplewood Plaza. "What does that mean? Do you want me to go there?" Mike blurted out, a mix of fear and excitement in his voice. Of course, no one answered him. He felt a burning urgency in his chest, and despite the pouring rain, Mike immediately jumped on his motorcycle and sped off to the address, 15 Elm Street. Upon arrival, he found a newly constructed luxury apartment building. Mike drove straight down to the parking garage. He intended to go up to apartment 1008 to investigate, but he didn't have a residence card. The security guards here were highly professional. It was unlikely they'd let him in just by asking. Even if he could get to that apartment, he wouldn't have a key to enter. Mike hesitated for a moment, then decided to drive to a nearby market and buy a delivery uniform. After that, he carried his bag of goods to the building's lobby and began subtly questioning the security guard. "Excuse me, sir. Can I ask you something? It's been raining so hard, and I finally found a delivery address, but the customer won't answer their phone. Could you please let me go up and deliver the package?" The security guard looked Mike up and down, then shook his head, refusing. "I understand, but recent regulations don't allow delivery people to go upstairs. And you said the customer won't answer the phone, right? My delivery is worth over $600, and now they're not answering. I'm so anxious." Seeing Mike drenched, carrying a bag of wet packages, the security guard felt a pang of sympathy. He told Mike to sit in the waiting area for a while until the rain let up. Who knows, maybe the customer will call back. "Do you have a specific address? Or if the customer still hasn't called after my shift, I can go up and check for you." Mike had gained the security guard's trust. With a newfound hope, Mike began to subtly inquire about apartment 1008. "I have the mobile number, but I don't know if they're trying to ghost me or something. They just won't pick up." As Mike spoke, he showed the security guard his phone with the unsent call. The kind-hearted security guard immediately opened the resident logbook and said, "Your customer is Mr. Arthur Turner, right? But I've noticed this homeowner only visits occasionally with his wife. They don't live here permanently. They usually stop by in the late afternoon and then leave. They haven't arrived today yet, so that's probably why you can't reach them." "Oh, really? So his wife must have placed the order. Do you know if they're coming today? I'll be ruined if they don't." Mr. Turner hasn't been back for a while, not even for a week, but he and his wife dress very fashionably. He's a lawyer, so I doubt he'd ghost your delivery. Residents even say he's on the management board. The security guard seemed sympathetic and tried to reassure Mike. Mike paused for a moment, then cautiously said, "Mr. Guard, in case I can't reach the owner, could you give me his husband's number? He usually receives all the tech orders, so he'd probably have it." The kind security guard hesitated for a moment. Mike seemed honest and looked thin and worn, so he leaned closer and whispered, "It's against the rules, but your situation is pitiful. I'll make an exception this one time. Go ahead and write it down." With that, the security guard opened the resident information book. Mike quickly dialed the number for the owner of apartment 1008, then profusely thanked him. After waiting a bit longer, Mike stood up, bid farewell to the security guard, and got into his car to drive home. He waited for the owner of apartment 1008 to appear, but to no avail. After changing out of his rain-soaked clothes, he curled up on his bed. Only then
did he pull out his phone and try the number the security guard had given him for the owner of apartment 1008, using a messaging app. And just as he suspected, the profile picture for this number belonged to lawyer Arthur Turner, who was indeed Mike's neighbor. When he heard the security guard read out the name of the owner of apartment 1008, Mike was 90% certain it was Arthur Turner, the lawyer in their neighborhood. He continued to search for information about his neighbor on the messaging app. Normally, the two rarely interacted or met. Arthur was extremely busy, sometimes leaving early and returning late, or even staying away for several days. So Mike only knew his name and profession, but hadn't had a chance to ask more. After some searching, Mike found the lawyer neighbor's Facebook page. Most of the personal page only had a few posts introducing his law firm, and a few cases he had successfully handled. Mike paid particular attention to the law firm's logo and the lawyer's profile picture, so he searched for this information on Google to get a clearer view. At first glance, Mike thought the company's logo was an abbreviation of Arthur Turner, but when he looked closely, he saw two letters J-A-K intertwined with each other, and below them, Ronald M.
Wasn't it? Mike asked himself. He was beginning to realize the connection between the events he had found today, as if there was a thread weaving through these clues. He was burning with impatience to unravel it. Mike remembered the apartment building's security guard saying that Turner often came home with his wife. But everyone knew that handsome, charismatic lawyer Turner was single. So who was this wife? Was there some shady relationship between lawyer Turner and Holly? If Turner had an old Facebook account dedicated solely to friending and interacting with Holly, then it was highly likely their relationship was more than just neighbors. The more Mike thought about it, the more convinced he became that his suspicions were well-founded, and he decided to return to the apartment building tomorrow to verify.
2 days later, it was Sunday, a day off. But today, Mike wasn't wearing his delivery uniform. Instead, he rummaged through an old wallet, slipped in a printed photo of his neighbor Holly, and then headed to the apartment building at 15 Elm Street to gather information. Mike knew that in luxury apartments like this, it would be difficult to get personal information about a resident, so he had devised various tricks to avoid suspicion and easily obtain more details. After parking in the basement, Mike walked up to the lobby and approached the young security guard on duty. He pulled out the prepared wallet, pretending to ask, "Excuse me, could you tell me if this lady lives here? I found this wallet in the basement parking, so I assume she's a resident."
The security guard took the wallet and carefully examined the printed photo of Holly and Mike from Facebook. He then said, "This lady seems to live here, but I'm not sure which apartment. She and her husband occasionally come here to visit for a while, but they don't reside here permanently, so I don't know their exact apartment number. Maybe you could post it on the residents' group chat. Perhaps someone will see it and contact you." Mike didn't know how to respond because posting it would expose his real identity. Fortunately, an elderly woman who had just finished her exercise walked by as Mike and the young security guard were discussing finding the owner of the wallet. She stopped to listen. The old woman took the photo from the security guard's hand, scrutinized it with squinted eyes for a moment, then exclaimed cheerfully, "This lady lives on my floor, but she hasn't moved in permanently yet. She just brought some furniture over. I heard she's selling her old house by the end of the year and then moving into her new home. That's great."
"Which floor does she live on, ma'am? If so, can I go up with you to return her belongings? Losing so much money, she must be quite upset," Mike asked quickly. "She lives on the 10th floor, but I'm not sure if her husband will be home today. And if you found the wallet here, she must have just arrived at the lobby to have lost it," the young security guard added. "Go with the old lady to her apartment. If it's not hers, just bring it back here, and the management will announce it on the bulletin board for the owner to pick up." Mike's heart swelled with joy. He walked confidently with the old lady up to the 11th floor. However, he remained anxious, fearing he might run into lawyer Turner at home, in which case he wouldn't know how to explain himself. He rang the doorbell of apartment 1008 several times, but no one answered. Mike thought for a moment, then took the elevator down to the basement, got his car, and drove away. This confirmed that lawyer Arthur Turner and Holly had a relationship beyond normal friendship. It was possible that Holly had been having an affair. But how did this relate to Mark's death? If he presented these clues to the police now, would they launch an investigation? Were there other secrets hidden in apartment 1008? Mike lay on his bed, his hands behind his head, his mind racing with thoughts, and eventually he drifted off to sleep.
As Mike slept soundly, he felt a sudden chill on his leg, as if someone was dragging him. When he forced his eyes open, his heart stopped. Dr. Mark was sitting at the foot of his bed, his eyes sunken and hollow, staring at Mike. "What do you need? Go to Mark's dental clinic. All the truth will be revealed there." Mike's voice was distant and mournful. He slowly stood up and walked out of the room. Mike, like a sleepwalker, followed him. And somehow, in the blink of an eye, he found himself standing in front of a stark white room. Inside, a woman was screaming furiously, pointing at a man in a white lab coat. "I'll make sure you go to hell! You're a murderer! My son contracted HIV because of your negligence and carelessness. We want proper compensation. Please withdraw your lawsuit. I will do anything for you."
The man in the white lab coat tried to calm the situation, but it was no use. The woman continued to curse. "Can money buy back my son's life? Can it? Answer me. Can your $1 million bring my son's life back? I will make sure you suffer. You will go to prison." With that, the woman stormed out of the room, leaving the man in the lab coat trying to hold her back.
A moment later, the room door opened again, and lawyer Arthur Turner, dressed in a very elegant black suit, walked in. The man in the lab coat took off his mask, tiredly leaning back on the sofa to talk to lawyer Turner. Mike now realized that the man in the lab coat was Dr. Mark. He looked desperate, his eyes sunken and full of worry as he asked lawyer Turner, "Do you have a solution yet? I've already raised the compensation to $1 million, but she still won't agree." Lawyer Turner smirked mysteriously, then spread a few photos on the table and declared confidently, "No matter how much money you have, it can't fill their endless greed. But don't worry, these photos are much cheaper. I had someone follow her and capture everything about that boy's mother secretly having an affair with a man. If you show her these, you know what will happen, right? Mike, you really did a good job. What's the price? Half of what you're offering them. The rest I'll find a way to make her family drop the lawsuit against you. Don't worry, she'll accept it even if it's just a few tens of thousands."
What do I do now? He's a notorious loan shark. If this gets out, who knows who'll be next? We need to handle this quickly and cleanly. We have 6 months until the election. I don't want anything to stand in my way. If I get elected to the district council, my reputation will surely grow. Then, Mark's dental clinic won't forget your help. With that, Lawyer Turner and Dr. Mark exchanged knowing smiles. Lawyer Turner gathered the photos on the table, put them in his briefcase, stood up, greeted Mark, and quickly left the room. Mike stood alone in the corner of the room, unable to clearly see everything that had just happened. A wave of indignation rose within him. He regretted wanting to help such a heartless doctor like Mark. He questioned himself. What are you doing, Mike? You should be crushing this despicable man. But then, someone else entered the room. Dr. Mark angrily threw a pile of documents at a young man. But strangely, only a moment had passed, yet Dr. Mark had changed into a different outfit. Mike looked at the digital clock on the wall and was astonished to see that half a year had passed in front of his eyes. He still didn't understand what was happening when he heard Mark's enraged voice. "Damn it! These scoundrels dare to threaten me?" The young man standing opposite quickly interjected, "Please calm down, sir. I know that Holly is filing for divorce, and she's definitely using the evidence of that little boy's HIV infection to extort you. But only you, me, and Lawyer Turner have that evidence. I suspect they've been working together from the beginning. Perhaps the boy's case was even fabricated by them, as our clinic's instruments are always sterilized and clean. It's impossible for them to cause HIV infection during examination. We'll continue to investigate this for you, sir. Hire as many detectives as you need. Money is no object. This time, I'm determined to settle this once and for all with that wife."
At that moment, another man entered the room. He handed a USB drive to Dr. Mark and respectfully reported, "Sir, I understand. My team in the US managed to recover the data. Here it is. Also, the two detectives discovered that 7 months ago, Holly bought fake HIV test results for that boy, turning Mark's negative result into a positive one. Everything is just as Mr. Hughes suspected." Mark's fury boiled over. His eyes blazed with rage, and he slammed his fist on the table, snarling, "I can't swallow this hatred. I swear I'll cut them into pieces. Holly and her lies. Now, you two make 2 copies of all this evidence. One for me, and one that I'll personally bring to expose them. I'll make sure that good-for-nothing lawyer goes to prison. We can't let him run wild like this and pollute society."
"Yes, sir. I've already prepared them. Do you need us to come with you to the police station now?" No need to come. Now, I'm going home to transfer all the money from the safe. I don't want that good-for-nothing to get wind of it and try to steal it. After that, I'll go straight to the police." The man said, "Yes, sir." Then he went out. Mark then opened the safe, took out a pile of documents, and put them into a leather briefcase. 8989 Main Gate. Mike mumbled the safe's code, memorizing how to open it.
As soon as Mark left the room, Mike sat up. "Still not up to cook dinner? It's 6 p.m. already." Chris's voice abruptly cut off Mike's dream. Mike groggily sat up, looking around the room, then at Chris, standing in front of him. The wall clock showed 6 p.m. It was already getting dark outside. Mike chuckled. "I fell asleep. I'm up now. You go take a shower, and dinner will be ready." "You're always so tired and irritable. You're 28, but you're always forgetting things. You need to exercise more, or you'll really lose your mind, seriously." Chris continued to grumble as he went to his room. As soon as Chris left, Mike quickly sat up, pulled out his notebook, and jotted down the safe's code he had seen. Only then did he feel at ease going to the kitchen to cook dinner.
However, in his haste, Mike only managed to wolf down a bowl of rice before rushing back to his room, opening his laptop to search for information about the lawsuit against Mark's dental clinic. But it seemed that while Mark was alive, he had used money to remove all information about the lawsuit from online platforms, so there was hardly any significant news. Mike recalled the image of Mark in his dream that afternoon. Mark wasn't wearing his lab coat then, but a white shirt with a faint fashion brand logo embroidered on the hem and black trousers. If he remembered correctly, when Chris and Mike found Mark dead in a pool of blood, he was wearing this same outfit. But that day, Mike, with his fear of blood, hadn't dared to look closely and had rushed out. So Mike had to take a chance and call his brother to ask about the incident that day. "Chris, do you remember what color shirt Mark was wearing when he died? It keeps haunting me." Chris was on his phone, chatting in bed. When his younger brother seemed curious about the horror of their neighbor's house, he sat up and firmly reminded him, "What shirt he wore has nothing to do with your haunting. Get it out of your head, or you'll just keep hallucinating. It's just a question. But I keep dreaming of Mark in that white shirt with a knife in his chest. It's terrifying." At this, Chris looked at Mike with a pained expression. Yes, Mark was wearing a full suit, white shirt and black pants. Even you, who only saw a little, are having nightmares. I'm used to seeing dead people at the hospital, but Mark's death was truly the most horrific. Luckily, I just sleep soundly after my shifts and don't know what's going on.
The two brothers continued to talk for a while. Mike bid Chris good night and returned to his room. After tossing and turning in pain for a while, Mike decided to get up and draft an email to request another day off tomorrow to finalize Dr. Mark's case.
Early the next morning, Mike sped to the address of Mark's dental clinic he found online. After waiting in front for a while, he finally saw the man he had seen in his dream yesterday afternoon. Mike rushed after him, and with just a few questions, the man agreed to sit down with Mike at a coffee shop. "Who are you to Mark?"
The man spoke first. "I'm a neighbor. We used to be quite close because of our work. I don't believe Mark assaulted his wife and was accidentally killed, so I had to find you to get to the bottom of it, so Mark can rest in peace." The man intently observed the change in Mike's expression, then crossed his arms and said sternly, "What do you know already?" Since the man in front of him seemed unconvinced, Mike laid all his cards on the table. "I suspect Mark and the lawyer named Turner have an illicit relationship. You're Mark's assistant, so you must have crucial evidence. It seems you know a lot already. Yes, I'd have all the evidence of their wicked deeds, but unfortunately, the evidence in my possession was stolen by someone closest to Mark, who betrayed him for money right after he died. So I need time to compile it. However, they already know I'm looking for the evidence, so they've bribed everyone involved to keep quiet." Mike was shocked by the man's revelations, holding his head and crying out in regret. "You knew about that too? And you still told Hughes about it?"
The other man looked at Mike in surprise. "How did you know it was Hughes?" He used to be trusted by Mark for important work, but recently he got into debt from gambling. That's how Holly and Turner got to him. Holly is just a common teacher. How could she be so cunning? She's stupid, but Turner is the mastermind behind it all. That guy's brain is full of rocks. He probably even staged Mark's death, so that when Mark went home that afternoon to get money before reporting them, it would happen. However, I don't have evidence of this, and the police are still investigating. I hope they can expose those bastards." The man's voice grew fierce, his facial scar twitching with each word.
Mike then angrily told the man about the safe in Dr. Mark's office and his intention to open it to see what was inside. The man pondered for a moment, then slowly said, "I'm afraid the police have already sealed off the office, and Mark's clinic is temporarily closed because no one has taken over. Holly knows nothing. She's only been there a few times to quickly replace staff, then leaves. I only came today to check the office. Mark's office is still sealed off." It was then that Mike revealed his true intention, to persuade the man to enter Dr. Mark's office. "I've been talking for a while, and I still don't know your name, but since you're being honest, I'll be honest too. I suspect there's crucial evidence in Mark's safe. Didn't Mark tell you he prepared 2 sets of evidence, and he definitely wouldn't have kept documents at home? It must be in the office safe."
"How did you know about that? You're so close to Mark, yet we've never met?"
My name is Dave, the chief accountant of Mark's dental clinic. I'm a year younger than Mark, but I've been with him since he started. So it's fine to go into the office. You know how to get past the seal. But I honestly don't know the safe's code. Mark, being the boss, naturally had his own private secrets. Mike chuckled, then confidently told Dave, "You'll see. I'll know how to open it. And we'll report it to the police right away. I'm sure it contains evidence to expose them."
Unsure how confident Mike was, Dave decided to take a gamble and trust him. They looked around, then began to enter the clinic, carefully peeling back the police tape on Dr. Mark's office door and slipping inside. Mike remembered the actions he had seen in his dream, and after a moment of fumbling with the safe, the steel door clicked open. Mike joyfully pulled out a bag of documents and handed them to Dave. "Look, is this it?"
Dave took the documents from Mike's hand.
a sinister smile spreading across his face, then pulled a knife he had hidden in his pocket, turned, and held it to Mike's throat. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Good job, little brother. Thanks to you, I found this stuff. Startled, Mike cried out in horror. Enough. You're still too naive. I don't care what your relationship with old Mark was, but it looks like you're useful. Thanks for what you know, but you know too much. I'll have to get rid of you.
Not only that, but the knife was now pressed firmly against Mike's throat, and Dave's hands, like steel clamps, pinned Mike's thin body, preventing him from moving. Mike, struggling to break free, felt helpless and let his arms drop in despair. Why are you betraying Mark? You found evidence of his crimes, and now you're betraying your boss? And right here in his clinic? You want to kill me? Are you even human? Dave sneered, his breath reeking of cigarettes as he spoke into Mike's ear. For money, can't you see? I worked for him for 10 years, but my salary was never more than a paltry sum, while the clinic's monthly revenue was billions. I wouldn't have betrayed him, but Turner found out I was falsifying the books, so I had no choice but to betray him. But I have to live and feed my family. I can't let that bastard Turner ruin my life just for a dead boss, can I?
How did you know about me? You're not even a specialist, are you? Dave forced a bitter laugh. He spoke, sounding as if he was crying, full of sorrow. That guy is a snake. He wormed his way into almost all of Mark's dental clinic's staff and partners, so he knows everything. Holly completely supplied him with money, so he used Mark's money to pay off those close to Mark. When he found out we had evidence, he used a fabricated story about the boy contracting HIV at the clinic to threaten us into silence. As for Mark, he probably killed him too.
I finally started to understand what was happening. This lawyer, who seemed so minor, could be so sinister. I guess I'm a fish on a chopping block now, and I don't know how to escape. Dave pulled Mike closer to the safe and added unnecessary words. I'll finish you off right here. Who told you to meddle in other people's business? If the police find a body next to a safe full of money, they won't suspect a thing, will they? They'll just think you're a thief, and I was just acting in self-defense when you attacked me. What do you think of that plan? This scheme was even taught to me by lawyer Turner.
Unexpectedly, Dave burst into laughter. He patted the knife against Mike's face. You're a clever little rascal, aren't you? With that, he pressed Mike's entire body to the floor, his large, imposing figure pinning Mike down, then raised the knife, aiming for a fatal blow to Mike's frail throat. Just then, the door burst open, and a forceful kick landed squarely on Dave's face, sending him sprawling to the ground. A stern voice boomed, "You're under arrest!"
Mike, bleeding from his mouth, lay in the corner, dazed, staring at the police officer standing before him. After a brief struggle, Dave finally surrendered and allowed himself to be handcuffed. Mike was taken to the police station to give his statement. Based on the evidence found at the scene and the testimonies of Dave and Mike, the police quickly arrested lawyer Turner and Holly. Turner initially denied everything, but Holly, with her weak and cowardly nature, immediately confessed the entire story to the police. What was even more shocking was that Dr. Mark was not the only victim in this case. The police also found another body in a state of decomposition in apartment 1008. It was the body of his assistant, Hughes. After Dr. Mark's death, under Turner's pressure, Dave had arranged to meet Hughes at apartment 1008 to talk, but Hughes, even at the point of death, refused to betray his boss, determined to report what he knew about Turner and Holly's conspiracy to frame Dr. Mark. In addition, Turner had used Hughes's family to pressure him, but Hughes still refused to yield. Because Dr. Mark had once saved his mother's life when she suffered a sudden heart attack and couldn't afford treatment. After a week of beatings and imprisonment, unable to bribe Hughes, Dave and Turner together killed the young man, leaving him in the safe in apartment 1008, waiting for an opportunity to dispose of the body. However, at the apartment complex at 28 Willow Creek Way, security guards were on duty 24/7, and there were surveillance cameras, so they hadn't had a chance to carry out their plan. At this point, lawyer Turner finally bowed his head and confessed at the police station. He admitted to orchestrating the incident of the child being exposed to HIV during a dental examination at Dr. Mark's clinic. Having known Dr. Mark's wife beforehand and exploiting Holly's naive nature, Turner had approached her and quickly won the affection of a woman who longed for attention and lavish treatment. From there, he arranged for Holly to pressure the doctor to alter the child's test results and then use the family to file a lawsuit against Mark's dental clinic out in the open.
After that, Turner stepped in like a savior, gaining Dr. Mark's trust and being entrusted with many important responsibilities within the clinic. Turner had gained access to almost all the weaknesses of the key personnel at Mark's dental clinic and important partners. He had reaped substantial profits from legal consulting and profit sharing with Mark's partners. However, his greed was boundless. Seeing Mark's growing reputation in the market and increasing revenue, Turner began to tempt 8 of Mark's dental clinic's employees with sweet promises, enticing Holly to file for divorce to split half of Mark's assets. He then used Holly's pregnancy to unknowingly lure and force her to carry out his plan, threatening to expose her wrongdoings to her family and society if she refused to cooperate.
But on the other side, Mark had also guessed Turner's sinister intentions, so he secretly hired detectives to investigate. As soon as he received the confirmed results, Mark surely intended to report it to the police. But as he returned home to retrieve money, he found Turner in his house, talking about Holly's pregnancy and saying it was his child. Knowing this, Turner quickly thwarted Mark's plans. Turner and Holly then staged a play until midnight, ensuring Mark would never have the chance to open his mouth and expose them.
The man who had been frantically waving a knife and threatening Holly that night was none other than Turner, playing the role of an abusive husband. At that moment, the neighbors were about to rush in to intervene, but Turner plunged the knife into Mark's heart, killing him instantly. Holly then deliberately used a fruit knife to inflict a small wound on her shoulder, creating a fake scene of murder due to legitimate self-defense. If the case went to court, Turner was capable enough to help Holly escape imprisonment. They stripped Mark, untied his hands, and removed the gag from his mouth so Turner could take him back to his house via the rooftop cage. Holly remained behind to play the victim. The police also recovered all evidence and objects from Turner's adjacent house and from the trash room of the urban development, including images of the trace removal procedures. That's how the police quickly recognized the irregularity in Mark's death when they saw the rope marks on his hands. They immediately identified Holly as a suspect in her husband's intentional murder and began covert surveillance.
Ultimately, the situation was far more complex than anyone imagined. If Mike hadn't quickly dialed 911 when Dave was distracted, the truth might have remained hidden for much longer. Thanks to that, the police were able to save Mike and swiftly uncover the truth behind the case. From that day on, Mike ate and slept soundly, never again having to face a blood-soaked ghost.